Hey guys, my name is April from Unsolicited Plant Talks and welcome back to our channel. Today in this video, I would like to talk about an update on growing Hoyas on a moss pole. I mentioned that I would like to try growing Hoyas on a moss pole, and so I wanted to give you guys an update on how that's doing. It has been over, I believe it has been over a year now. The processes that I went through to create this, my pros and cons, what are the things that I would like to change if I do it again. And yeah, if you decide that you wanted to do it for yourself as well, maybe you can learn something from my experience so that you can grow yours much better than how I have grown mine. With all that being said, let me go ahead and show you guys what our moss pole looks like now. Here is what the moss pole looks like now. A lot of these cuttings are lacunosa and small-leaved Hoyas. I have moss inside. I'm gonna go ahead and talk in depth about that in a little bit. And if you guys can tell, this is a plastic moss pole. I have imported a lot of these myself because although there are some moss poles that are available on Amazon, at the time I couldn't really find anything that is this strong. This is a very strong moss pole. It's not your typical flimsy one. It does have that hexagonal openings over here so that you can put your plants in there, the roots can grow in there. Typically, a lot of people use this specific moss pole for philodendrons, like this one. Okay, this is a red Anderson. I don't know if you guys can see. So as you can tell, this is a 5-gallon pot, and I'm holding it via the moss pole. It is attached to the pot itself, but I am holding it via the moss pole, and I can even hold it this way. And you see how it's hardly like bending? And that is because these moss poles are very strong. For right now, we are going to focus on this Hoya moss pole. I did some jerry rigging on how I wanted this moss pole to look like. Before I just started propagating plants on this moss pole, I had to think about how I'm going to hang it. How am I going to grow these Hoyas permanently? Because when you propagate the Hoyas, you would have to keep it this way first so that Hoyas won't just fall off. Especially I didn't use any pins or any clips, so Hoyas won't just fall off. The moss is going to stay a lot more moist, longer than if it were hanging like this, because there's an opening right here. So if you keep it like this, it's going to hold some of the moisture and some of the water right here, which is very important when you're propagating Hoyas. So I told myself, okay, as soon as the Hoyas grow and get established while it's like this, is that how I want to keep it permanently? And I told myself, no, I do not. I want to hang it like this. As you can tell, it's really long and it's really pretty. I got this from Amazon and I put some on here. As you can tell, it's very rusted. So here's the first con of this. It's very rusty. It's doing its job. It's not going anywhere, but it is rusty. So if that's not your thing, then maybe you might want to find something different that will provide some holes for you. If you just make a hole on this plastic, whatever you're trying to grow on this moss pole, if it gets too heavy, it might end up ripping the plastic off. You're probably going to be so unhappy because it would fall and all of your hard work will just go to waste. Not necessarily go to waste, but all of your hard work will just be on the floor, right? I also use some S-hooks like this one. It's a little bit rusty as well. I use S-hooks and I put S-hooks on here so that I can hang it onto the area right here where I'm growing all of my hanging philodendrons and including this Hoya right here. So I have 2 S-hooks. And the plant is growing like this. As you can tell, all of the leaves are hanging beautifully and facing the same direction with this orientation. And that is because that is how they're permanently growing. There are some right here that are wonky. I don't know if it's obvious, like this one right here. It's not really hanging properly like this. And that is because this actually started climbing onto the grate or onto the area that I had put this onto. So I think that would actually look really good too. If you decide to place this at home, I would recommend putting a trellis on top so that if you grow it permanently like this, you can have some hanging Hoyas down here, and then you can also have some Hoyas that are climbing up. And I think it's going to look really cool. However, I don't know how that's going to work out very well for you, or what would be your plans if you decide to do that, because let's talk about care of the Hoyas that are in this moss bowl. So what I did, like I said, is I used some moss in here. As you can see, this is mountain moss. So this is dried mountain moss. Oregon moss is specifically what it's called. I bought this because it was so pretty. It was so green, and it's just very beautiful in the eyes. And I didn't know anything about it. I just know that it's a moss. It should hold a lot of moisture, right? Unfortunately, I used the wrong moss because mountain Oregon moss dries out really quick, and it's actually used mainly for toppings only. So if you are trying to do some arrangements, this moss right here would look really good on top, but it will not really hold a lot of moisture like a sphagnum moss. So if I were to redo this, I'm most likely going to use sphagnum moss. Now, I didn't put any fertilizer in here, but if you would like, you can add fertilizer in there while you're making your moss bowl, so that later on, you don't really have to worry about fertilizing your plants for 5, maybe 6 months, depending on what fertilizer and how much you put in there. You can just keep watering it and the plants will thrive. Now, like I said, I didn't put fertilizer on this one. However, I do fertilize these guys along with the other plants here in the greenhouse. So it didn't really matter that I didn't put fertilizer or slow release fertilizer inside. So biggest problem that I have is that this moss bowl dries out so quick for me. It's not necessarily the moss pole's fault. It is the moss that I use. So if you used sphagnum moss, you probably would have a better success. If you're familiar, if you have grown plants in moss, you also would understand that if you don't water moss regularly, or if you let it dry out for too long, it does become really dry. So you have to gauge how much you have to water the plants. And yeah, just learn how the plants and how the moss is responding to this kind of setup. Next thing is that because it is open on the sides, on both sides right here, and it is open right here, you can't, at least in my opinion, I wouldn't grow this permanently on the wall. If you're a busy person and you're not really trying to give yourself extra work, that might not be the best bet for you, because what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to take this down and then run some water through it, let it sit for a little bit so that the excess water can come out, and then hang it back up. Because if you're hanging this inside the house, you can't really just water it, because the water is gonna come out from the side. Maybe it might even seep through the back right here. Your wall's gonna be wet, your floor's gonna be wet, you might end up dealing with mold, you might end up dealing with messed up paint on your walls. So if you are growing this indoor, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, is how do you keep this guy from taking so much of your time watering? If you use sphagnum moss on yours, it's probably going to stay moist a little longer than mine, because it does hold a little bit more moisture and water than this one. However, another thing to consider is that when your plants get mature and get large, your moss is going to only hold so much amount of water, that if they are thirsty Hoyas and if they need to drink a lot because they have grown quite a bit, then you're gonna find yourself watering more often. So plan for that if you're planning on growing your Hoyas like this. It's like a potting, right? You just have to make sure that you have a plan in place so that when it comes to that time, you're not going to be so stressed about what you're going to do, and you wouldn't have to worry about you might be killing your plant because you have no plan in place. So think about the future, think about how you want to grow this Hoya and how you're going to proceed for when it's time to up pot, because definitely this guy is well rooted in there. You probably can't see as well, but it's very well rooted in there. And also lacunosa varieties are very thirsty Hoyas. I end up watering this almost every day, even though it's very humid here in the greenhouse. But like I said, I used the wrong moss, so I think that's the biggest problem that I have. So let's go to the varieties that I grew here. Let's start with, this is lacunosa and Louisa silver. So I have, this is what a lacunosa and Louisa silver look like right there. It's extremely easy to grow. A lot of these Hoyas are extremely easy to grow. I chose lacunosa because they grow really fast and they're easy to grow. And so I put lacunosa silver right here, and I put some kind of reverting vines right here as well. So you can see this is also a lacunosa Louisa silver, but you see how it's reverting, but I thought it's still really, really beautiful. So I added it here to give it a little bit of a beautiful look, so it's not just pure silver. Now, over here, I have lacunosa Asami. You can see that it's outer variegated. It's got that beautiful abs. This is one of my favorite Hoyas as well. Very easy to grow. All of the blooms of this plant is very fragrant. This is growing in a little bit of a shaded area in the greenhouse, so some of the leaves are going to be bigger, and that is the reason why. So look at this beautiful one right here. Absolutely gorgeous. So we have lacunosa Louisa silver. We got lacunosa Asami right there. And we have Amarillo. This lacunosa is, I understand it's not for everybody. It's either you like it or you don't. In the beginning, actually, I really disliked that Hoya because it looked like it has some virus, as you can see right there, or it looks like it's nutrient deficient. However, it grew on me. Actually, I grew a really big, beautiful hanging pot, and it is so beautiful. And ever since then, I thought it was an absolute gorgeous plant. It is very unique. I continued cultivating it. If you grow it with less light, as you can see right here, you're not going to have many of that speckling. If you grow it in bright light, it's going to be lime green. So you have to find a balance when growing Hoya lacunosa Amarillo. So here's our Amarillo. I also didn't have a problem growing this guy. It started bushing right there. Our next variety right here is Krohniana right here. This is your real Krohniana. You see how it is for date right here, heart-shaped leaves. The original plant was obtained from Doug of Vermont of Hoya. I know there was controversy about Hoya lacunosa or Hoya Krohniana. It is stable compared to the other Krohniana silver that we all know of. It is growing a bit slower than everybody else, and I have no idea why. As you can see right here, Louisa silver is the fastest growing, and then Amarillo, and the variegated one. So I don't know why this one's slow, because my props are a little bit faster, so this may require a little bit more water, and because I'm not watering this moss bowl as often, that's probably why it's not growing as fast. But look how cute those heart-shaped leaves are. Next on the line is just what we're calling a lacunosa Krohniana silver, and it is this guy right here. This is in circulation as Krohniana silver. If you're looking for this particular one, we call it Hoya lacunosa, open and close parentheses, Krohniana silver on our website. We also have the splash variety, also an easy one to grow, absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And I thought it would be a really good addition to this moss pole. I did put my Hoya lacunosa Louisa silver on this side, and then I put something with green and a little bit of yellow. I also tried to put the Krohniana right here because it just grows dark green. And then I put another silver right here. I want to be able to differentiate both of them. Although you can tell which one is which, I still wanted to avoid putting them together to give it a little bit more of an even look. Next up, we have Hoya lacunosa or Hoya Krohniana black right here. It is another beautiful species right there. I really love this one. I think the flower of the black one, even though it looks just like any other Krohniana's flower, I think it is the most scented one, and it smells so good. They're also fast grower. I don't know why this one also grew really slow. I do wonder if it's just this area is not very happy because it's not getting enough water. I don't know if that's what it is. This is a failed experiment because I didn't really pay attention to it as much, but it's still growing and I'm still very happy about it. When I propagated it right here, I put the extra stem inside underneath the plastic through this moss and out right here so that not only that it will grow roots from the main stem that I had put under there, it's also going to grow roots on other areas. Just in case the main plant dies, then the plant is not going to completely die on me. This one is not a lacunosa. This is a species Sulawesi. I'm actually not sure which exact species this is. I know it's species Sulawesi, but it could also be a minutiflora. I haven't flowered it. This specific one, it was a dying cutting that I had just stuck in here, and it continued growing, and I really love it. And then the last one, last but not the least, is our Hoya lacunosa variegated. This is such a cute one. This is definitely one of my favorites. It's not the fastest growing. That's why I'm very surprised that this is growing much faster than this one and the Krohniana, because this does not grow really fast. I'm a little bit confused how she's outgrowing those two, because out of all of these, excluding the non-lacunosa right here, this is the slowest growing lacunosa that I currently have. If you are interested in growing your own Hoya moss pole, you can grow it like this as well. There's no problem with that if that's your preference. However, the reason why I didn't do this is because I know that these guys are going to trail, and once they trail, then it's going to cover the ones that are underneath them. So I thought this would be a better way of growing this Hoya so that it will show all of the different varieties and they'll have their own spaces to trail. Do not use mountain moss or do not use dried Oregon moss. Use something else. I'm pretty sure you can also use some cocoa husk, although it is going to dry out much faster as well. I think sphagnum moss would be great. If you are worried that you're going to rot your plants or you don't have enough circulation where you're planning on growing these permanently, then I recommend putting maybe perlite or bark mixed with moss so that it creates that extra airflow, extra aeration within the moss bowl. Last but not the least, pick whatever Hoya you are planning on growing and displaying on your moss bowl. Now, keep in mind that there are certain varieties that grow really fast, so you wanted to make sure that you also think about that. There are also varieties that get really big, so if you are putting big Hoyas right here, you might not be able to get away with 10 different Hoyas. You might be able to get away with maybe 3 to 4 before this gets overloaded. Just because your cuttings are small doesn't mean they're going to stay small, so you have to make sure that you keep that in mind when you're picking your plants. When I grew these, I grew them like this in the beginning. Like I said, kept it moist, put all my cuttings in there. I didn't use any pins, but if you prefer, you can also use pins to hold them in place. Kept it away from bright light in the beginning, and as soon as they were rooted and growing, I was ready to hang it. So I hope this video was interesting enough. If you decide to grow a Hoya moss pole, please, I would love to see them. Share them with me on Instagram. I'll link our Instagram down below. And let me know what you think. If it's for you, if it's not, what are the challenges that you're facing? And I would love to see what kind of Hoyas you are growing, because maybe I'll make another one because I think it's really cute. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something on this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to share and tell your friends and family about it. Subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.